The African Israelite Justice Foundation is not your usual legal practice. You see, we focus primarily on cases involving injustice against African Israelite groups or injustice against individuals because he or she identifies as an African Israelite or an Israelite of African descent. In other words, we are not a general legal practice. Instead, we specialize on African Israelite cases. And also, family, please keep in mind, we are a brand new organization, not affiliated with any existing organizations. However, it is our hope to establish connections with all African Israelite groups and people here in the States and around the world. Family, we need to hear your stories of injustice so that we can begin to record, investigate, and identify the enemies of Israel hiding behind the veil, and then ultimately hold them accountable in a court of law. And as stated before, we are a brand new organization with limited funds, and we are in the process of expanding our resources to further enhance our legal team, who will litigate our cases. And if you would like to join this historic cause, please share this message all over social media. Spread this message of IsraeliteJustice.org worldwide. And get this message from Kyrie to Kanye, from Whoopi Goldberg to Nick Cannon. And also share your stories of injustice or donate to the cause. And if you so choose to, you can remain anonymous and let us do all the work. After all, that's what the Israelite Justice Foundation is here for. We are here to fight for your right to be Israel. As always, thank you in advance. We appreciate you and love you, Israel. Take care, family. Shalom.
All right. Peace and blessings, family. Shalom, shalom. Hope everybody's doing well, doing good on the Shabbat, relaxing, eating, fellowshipping, hanging out. Hopefully all is well. I know this was a impromptu lesson, but it just took me a while to get this thing up and running. I'm not the best StreamYard person, so it took me a while to get it up and running. So, but yeah, shalom, shalom, family. Come on in, come on in. This will be an interesting conversation. I know this is one of those hot button topics in Israel. And actually, let me see if I know Pastor Kelly is getting back from his Shabbat class, but he might want to pop in on here. So just give me a second, fam. Let me shoot him a quick text to see if he wants to hop on. 1 second. So shalom. And while we're waiting, shalom, shalom to everybody in the chat. Yeah, I see everybody joining in. Shalom, shalom, Ema Cassandra. Shalom, shalom, Ema Saul. Yasha. Shalom, shalom, Talisha Yah. Yasha Daphne. Yeah, forgive me if I mispronounced your names. Come on in. Shalom, shalom, Elder. See family coming on in. Peace and blessings. And just bear with me just for a moment. I'm trying to send out a quick text to see if I can get a few people to hop on here. Hang on. Where is that number? There it is. All right. Yep. So come on in, fam. So hopefully everybody's having a great Shabbat, relaxing, enjoying your fellowship, praise and worship. It's been a very relaxing Shabbat for me. So praise y'all for that. And let's see here, fam. All right, well, I guess I just have this number just buried in my All right, let me do it this way. Oh, that's why. All right, family, we'll get started here in a moment. I actually have a few guests coming on tonight. Let me see. All right. All right, fam. So as we're kind of waiting on some folks to come on in here, let me actually also do a bit of housekeeping here. So, I did want to let you know that as far as like the African Israelite Justice Foundation, so I have been forgetting to put the link to the African Israelite Justice Foundation's YouTube page. So if you haven't had a chance, please check it out. I will actually, while I have you guys here, let me grab the channel link and I'll put it in the chat. Let's see here. Here it is. Got it. All right, so I'm just going to place this in the chat, family. And like I said, if you get a chance, if it's something that you're interested in, please feel free to join. Just join the channel. Now, because what I plan on doing, most high willing. Actually, let me actually put a title on this thing. All right, there we go. Yep. So what the plan is, family, is that of course it's going to be a totally different channel, totally separate channel, and totally separate content. More so that channel is going to have a lot of the the issues that the African Israelite Justice Foundation deals with. So for the most part, the vision for that for that organization is to be more of an advocate for Israel. So any issues that come up, within the community, as far as defamation of character, slander, and now keep in mind that this isn't just your run-of-the-mill legal organization. So we can't, like, if you running short on cash, or if your landlord shorted you $20, we're not that organization, right? We're not the ones to work that out. We're very small because we're just starting. What I tell people is that we're baby brand new. And because of that, our funds are limited. So we have to, we only have a few smooth stones in our pouch right now. And so, we are taking our time and doing our research and putting our case together. And, most high willing, we'll have a case together, a case that will benefit all of Israel. So that's our goal. Because we're a small organization, just getting out the gate, we want to make sure our effort counts. So, right now we're focusing primarily on issues that will benefit all of Israel. So just keep that in mind, because we have had people reach out to us, with some personal issues that they wanted to have assistance with, but unfortunately we can't help with that. So just want to make sure we make that clear. So any questions on that, family, before we get started? And so again, just I put the message in the chat, and actually let me see if I can put it at the top, if I can pin it. Let's see here. There we go. Yeah. So there it is. Check it out, fam. Please, like I said, join if you can, if it's something that you're interested in. And most high willing, we're going to take out some giants, and that's for real, for real. So I know a lot of people, if you're kind of like me, you like to see some action. Maybe you want to see some action, before you support. So it's my intention to get the ball rolling and have some things that's visible in the public, that you can get behind. So, okay. All right. Shalom, shalom. All right. Well, peace and blessings. Let's get started because I am kind of running up against a time here. Let me see if I got a reply. Yeah. Got a Pastor Kelly. All right. So he might be jumping on. We'll see. And then, all right. So, all right, family. In the chat, where would you say that Israel is? Where, put it, if you could, please, family. No answer is a wrong answer, right? Just really want to get an idea of what you all are thinking. But just kind of put in the chat where you think is the land of Israel is. So when we get on that boat and that ship, the ship's at Tarshish, right? We're heading back over, back over to the continent or wherever. Where do you think we're going to end up? Because I know, for some people it's changed. Some people stayed the same. I know there's a movement of sorts right now. So, okay. So I see Lakoti Tanya says, they're scrolling fast. East Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa. Near South Africa, possibly Congo. All right. Northeast Africa. All right. Let's see. All right. Where do y'all think Israel, the land of Israel is? Africa. And let's see. Yeah, Israel is in Africa. That's true. So even present day Israel is in Africa. So Africa is a right answer either way. Yep. I honestly have no idea. I was right there with you, my brother. Hallelujah, hallelujah. There is so much movement. That's right, my brother Wayne Williams. Yep. You can put it. It said you can put slow mode on. Okay. Oh, to slow down the chat. Okay, I might have to do that. All right, East Africa. All right. So it looks like Africa, East Africa, South Africa. That looks like that's the trend. For the most part. Not a whole lot of votes I see for present day Israel or any land or territory over that way. And any reason for that, family? I know some of the reasons that I've heard had to deal with. There's no lions over there, which is true. There's no lions over there today. Or there's no rhinoceros over there. And which is true, but were there rhinoceros over there in the scriptures running around that Elijah or any of the Israelites were dealing with? So just something to think about, family. Just something to think about. But either way, let's go ahead and get started, family. Let's do this. All right, so the location of Israel, all right? And this kind of came about where this is like before I came into the truth, fam. I was part of one of those mega churches, and I was curious as to where Israel was, where the Exodus occurred, all the dirty details. I wanted to know, was it true? Because I've heard a lot of our Kemet brothers come out and they say things like, it's not true. You guys kind of Christianity borrowed stuff from Egyptology and stuff like that. And I was, as a Christian at the time, I was curious. So I went and did some research, and I was, blessed to have come across some information back then that actually to this day I've kind of held on to, but I haven't really said much about. And that is, when we track Israel, I think it's best to start at Egypt, because I think regardless of where we are in our understanding or our belief, right, or our hypothesis, I think for the most part we can all agree where Egypt is. So because we can all agree where Egypt is, let's start from there. And so, like I said, I'm not sure we're going to get through this full presentation today, because I don't want to make it too long. But at the very least, I want to track Israel from Egypt to Mount Sinai, where Mount Sinai is, right? From Egypt to Mount Sinai. And to do that, we have to find the Red Sea crossing. In other words, we have to look at the Exodus route. We got to find the bitter springs of Mara, right? The palms in the springs of Elim. We have to find the golden calf altar, the boundary markers around the around the mountain, Mount Sinai, the 12 pillars mentioned in the scripture, the cave of Elijah, the mountain burned by Yah, right? The mountain that's burned by Yah. So we have to find a mountain that is scorched, not a volcanic mountain, not made of volcanic stone, but scorched, as in you take the rocks, you throw the rocks down, and when the rock breaks, you can see that the outer surface of the rock is scorched. And just for giggles, we can find the split rock of Horeb. So any place, so like I said, the first place that we're going to try to find is Mount Sinai. We're going to come out of Egypt, and we're going to track Israel as we go over to Mount Sinai. And then when we get to Mount Sinai, we have to have all these, we have to check the check box on all these requirements, right? If we just found if we found a tall mountain, but the tall mountain doesn't have an altar, we can't really say that's the mountain. Or if we find a mountain and the mountain doesn't have pillars around the mountain, it's just a mountain. If we just found a mountain and the mountain isn't scorched at the top, then we just found a mountain. All right. So these are the requirements that we're looking for. We're looking for Red Sea crossing, Exodus, Exodus route, of course, bitter springs, springs of Elam, calf altar, boundary markers, 12 pillars, cave of Elijah, mountain burned by Yah, and the split rock of Horeb. All right. And any other bits of evidence that goes along, with Israel over in that area. So let's keep going, fam. All right. So Israel in Egypt. All right. So you may be aware. I'm not sure if you guys are aware that in Egypt there's a city called Avaris, right? And when people you ask people in Egypt, like, hey, were the Israelites ever here in Egypt? And Egyptologists will tell you no. Even though there is a settlement in Avaris, the city of Avaris, of Semites, like they'll tell you that, there's a large settlement of people, of Semites in Avaris, and we know that they are shepherds and that they came from the land of Canaan. So you may be wondering, it's like, well, then why do they say that, that Israel wasn't there? Or why do they say that there wasn't any, there was no proof? Well, the reason why they can get away with that is because of the time, right? When they look at the city of Avaris and they look at the time that the population was there, they say that, well, you know what? Well, these people were in Egypt far before, the time of Ramses, right? Far before the time of Ramses, and that's why a lot of historians will discount the evidence that's in Egypt because of the time, because they always want to tie Israel to the time of Ramses. Although there's also scriptures in the Bible that will tell you that Israel was actually there before the time of Ramses. But we'll get to that. So, all right, so we're starting off in Egypt. There's a town in there called Avaris, where archaeologists have confirmed that these people were Semites, and they were from the territory of Canaan. And just to give you an idea, I don't know if you can see, I don't know if my mouse shows up on the screen or not, but Avaris, if you're looking at the green upside down delta, Avaris is on the right. It's close to the top right. So that's where they have this, this city of which contains this population of Semites from Canaan, and that is an archaeological, historical fact, right? That fact. And so part of the proof that Israel was there, I'm just going to go through a few of these. First, you have the Joseph Stone. The Joseph Stone is found in Egypt, and it depicts or describes 7 years of famine. And then, you also have the step pyramid of Djoser, or Saqqara. I always struggle with this name here, but Saqqara. So in Saqqara, what they found, you can see the step pyramid off to the right, but there's also storage bins. And when they took a look inside those storage bins, they found that those storage bins held grain, right? So that's why there's a strong belief that the step pyramid of Djoser, or Joseph, which has storage bins of grain, is the location where the grain was stored during the 7 years of plenty, going into the 7 years of famine. So again, just kind of walking through some of the evidence that's there in Egypt that points to Israel being there in Egypt. And here's another screenshot of the storage bins. There's actually steps that go down. So as people wanted to get grain from the storage bin, they would actually go down those steps, get the grain from the bottom, and carry it all the way back up. So you can see it says grain bins of Joseph in the Imhotep Museum. All right. And so also in that same area, and I guess they call it in the complex, in the Joseph complex, there are inscriptions on the wall of famine. People in line, of course, you can see that their malnutrition and their bones are showing, right? So again, this is confirming like the purpose or what went on in this area, right? So you got pictures of it, that match the biblical description. You also have the bins and the pyramid, which also seems to line up with the Bible and scriptures. And then we also have, let's see, in the Brooklyn Museum, and let me see, what's the name of this text here? Hang on. Oh, it's called it's a papyrus. I forgot the name of it. But this is also a papyrus of Egypt, and or papyrus from Egypt. And within this papyrus lists the names of slaves, of Egyptian or slaves in Egypt. And probably, I think they would say something like 75% of those names were Semitic names. They were names that you can find in the Bible. So again, we know that Israel was there in Egypt because we also have a slave manifest of sorts, right? And this is just highlighting some of the names. You can see Sipra, right? Or Asher. Those are names that you can find in the Bible. So these are names that are showing up on the slave manifest in Egypt. And that's another view of the names. And so then we have the Ippur papyrus. And so in the Ippur papyrus, this was an Egyptian's take on on the famine that took place in the land. And so what you can see there on the right side of the screen where it says the statement from the Ippur papyrus. And so this is like I said, when the plagues fell in Egypt, he's giving an account of what happened from an Egyptian perspective. So in his papyrus, he's writing, there's blood everywhere. Lo, the river is blood, right? And of course, that also goes along with the Exodus 7:20, where it says all the rivers that are in the river were turned to blood. Or on the left-hand side, number 2 says, one thirsts for water. And number 2 says, and the Egyptians digged around about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. Exodus 7:24. Now you can go all the way down the list, right, family? It's pretty much a really good match of the plagues that happened in Egypt from an Egyptian's perspective. So that's another bit of evidence of Israel in Egypt during this time. And then we also have the Merneptah Stela. And in the Merneptah Stela, we find a mention of the word Yisrael. And it's usually all the way close to the bottom at line 27. So we basically have an artifact which also lists Israel by name. It says Yisrael. You can see it there. It says Merneptah Stela mentioning Yisrael. So we have the Egyptians mentioning Israel. We also have the Egyptians mentioning Israel in the Berlin statue pedestal relief. It says 21687. And it says, and in this pedestal, now this pedestal is interesting, right? So this is, Egypt is listing their enemies that are in Canaan. Let me say that again. This is a stela or a stone relief from Egypt listing the enemies that is fought in the land or the territory of Canaan, right? And in this list, you'll see three hieroglyphs at the bottom. And the one on the far right, it says Yisrael. Yisrael. So not only do we find Egypt confirming that Israel was in the vicinity, but we also have Egypt confirming where they were when they fought them. So this is a first-hand account, right? In the land of Canaan. And we actually have an idea of where they're located because of the two enemies that are listed before Israel is up in the, close to like the territory of Syria today, right? So that's one bit of evidence pointing to where Israel was back in during this time. And I kind of put this one in here just to give you an idea of when Israel was in the land of Egypt, because like I said, some people would say it was during the time of Ramses, but just want to let you know that there are other places in the scripture which describes a different time when Israel was in Egypt, as opposed to it being during the time of Ramses. And this is, 1 Kings 6 verse 1, and it says, "And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel will come out of the land of Egypt in the 4th year of Solomon's reign." So basically, from Solomon, if you go back 480 years, that's when Israel was in the land of Egypt, and that was before the time of Ramses. So again, for those folks that want to use Ramses as a justification for saying that Israel wasn't there, because when they look at the archaeology sites, they don't find a whole lot of archaeology for Israel during the time of Ramses, but they find it before, right? And so I just want to let you know that in Scripture, it does support Israel being there before the time of Ramses. All right. So we know that Israel, we confirmed that there are different things that confirm that Israel was in the land of Egypt. There's archaeology that confirms that, the site where they lived. There's archaeology to confirm, the plagues that happened, also the years of famine, that sort of thing. And we also have mention of Israel by name, by Egypt, right? Not only, just Israel just in general, but we also have a mention of Israel and a location, as far as where they are. But let's get to the Exodus. So one of the things, we know is that when Israel left, everyone knows about Israel leaving, and the sea parted, and they went in, and then Pharaoh chased after them, and then the seas, slammed back over Pharaoh's army and destroyed everybody. But I just want us to keep in mind is the number. So we know that it says, if you see the highlighted part, it says, "And he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and the captains over every one of them." So basically, the takeaway here, family, is that we know that there was a bunch of Pharaoh soldiers, chariot riders, that got caught up in this, that got destroyed. So at the very least, wherever we trace Israel, at the very least, we have to find the remains of a lot of people. The remains of chariots and wheels and stuff like that, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because, of course, family, there's different theories about, which direction Israel came out of Egypt, right? Some say they went over a reed sea, right? Even though the scriptures talk about, when it refers to the sea, where it parted, it said a great deep, right? And the reed sea isn't a great deep, right? But at the very least, we do know that wherever you believe that Israel moved from Egypt over into the promised land, you have to find artifacts or the remains of Pharaoh's army, right? So that's the requirement, right? So with that in mind, let's move on to our next slide. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but one of the theorized or hypothesized exits from Egypt, it has to do with this place called Nuebia. No, I'm mispronouncing that name. But it's on leaving from Egypt, going across, the Sea of Aqaba. And that gap there is roughly about 8 miles long, right? And so this was one of the proposed crossings of Israel. But of course, like you said, if this is one of the crossings of Israel, we would expect for there to be evidence, right? It said 600 and something chariots. They don't just disappear. They leave a mark when they got destroyed. So where we can find those chariots, that's a good place. That's where they cross. All right. All right. So it's just another screenshot of where they were. This is a Google Maps view of the valley that led into, the area that they believe Israel gathered. Like that's the plateau going over to Saudi Arabia. So of course, when they, excuse me, there were excavations in the, along that path, from Egypt all the way over to Saudi Arabia. And when they did the excavations, they put down those rovers, those deep sea rovers. Although it's not too deep at this point, or in some places it's not too deep. It does get down pretty deep in the middle. But what they found was chariot wheels. They found a bunch of chariot wheels that are down there today. And what you're looking at on your screen, you're looking at a screenshot of a chariot wheel in the Sea of Aqaba at that pass. And one thing to note is that not only is it just any chariot wheel, it's a chariot wheel whose design matches the chariot wheel design of the Egyptians during that time, right? During the time we expect for Israel to have left Egypt, because they have 6-spoke chariot wheels and they have, I believe it's like something like a 3-spoke chariot wheel, and maybe something in between. Here's another one. You can see this kind of sort of looks like a broken down chariot, right? You got the chariot wheel right there right there in the middle of the screen, and of course, you have the coral that's growing all over because it's been down there for forever. But the takeaway here, family, is that this is not just one or two. There are hundreds of these things that's down there. There are hundreds of these objects along this path from Egypt going into Saudi Arabia. So this is why, this hypothesis, the hypothesis of the crossing being here is one that's a strong hypothesis that's backed up by a lot of evidence, family. And this is another chariot wheel is laying flat. So again, this is on the Sea of Aqaba. You can see what looks like the hub or the spoke. There's a chariot wheel laying sideways, right? I don't know if you can see that, but there's a wheel at the top and a wheel at the bottom. And when they try to use radar to look inside the coral, and they did detect metal inside this coral, just as expected from Egyptian chariots. So like I said, there's a lot of evidence supporting this being the crossing. So all right, so let's, like I said, just take a quick recap. And actually, let me pull up my chat here, family. Hang on one second, because what I'm going to do is on my other screen, I'm just going to little fly flying around here. There we go. All right, there we go. Just hang on, just doing some administrative stuff, just kind of moving some of my screens around so I can see the chat, and also as I'm going through the presentation. All right, so any questions on that so far, family? So far, we took a look at some of the references that confirm Israel being in Egypt, and like I said, family, that's not all of them. Just wanted to touch on a few of them. We also touched on some references that where Egypt called Israel by name. They referred Yisrael by name, and also they also described where Yisrael was in that Merneptah Stela, in the land of Canaan, right? In the land of Canaan. That's per Israel during the time. That's per Egypt during the time, that Israel had just left Egypt, right? So just want to let you know that. All right, family. So we got that done. We confirmed where Israel was. Then we took a look at one of the proposed crossing places where Israel left, from Egypt, went over to Saudi Arabia, and we found that there was, a lot of chariots, chariot wheels a lot of debris, strewn across this, this band that stretches from Egypt over to Saudi Arabia. And again, this is strong evidence, confirming where Israel was, or where Israel crossed over. So let's keep going, family. All right. So that's just an idea of how wide it is, how long it is. Some people say it's 10 miles, some people say it's 8 miles, but it varies. All right. And here's just another picture. This is a 4-spoke chariot wheel, right along that stretch, family, right along that stretch. So, like I said, any other place that people propose the crossing occurred, at the very least, they need to produce some chariot wheels. If they say it was the seed of reeds, then show us some seed of reeds chariot wheels. Right? If they say it was someplace else, then show us someplace else chariot wheels. So far, this is like the only one so far that we have chariot wheels, and that debris, and we have a lot of it. Because remember, the scripture said it was like 600 of it, right? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch slides here, because as I was loading the presentation, StreamYard didn't like the fact that I wanted to use okay, let's see. Stop cam. All right, hang on, fam. Let me zoom in like this. And I will share this here. Let me show you something. All right. Okay, that's it. All right. Technical difficulties. All right, family. All right. So far, so good, right? We've, we're kind of just walking Israel across the, across the Sea of Aqaba. Let's see what this. Where is the mountain in Saudi Arabia where Moshe went up to? Whoa, Ema Pamela, we're gonna get to it. We are gonna get to it, Ema Pamela. Let me see if I can highlight your. That's a good question, Ema. Thank you for putting that out there. Where is the mountain in Saudi Arabia where Moshe went up to? That is the question. All right, so good question, Ema Pamela. All right, so let's see if we can find it. All right, so here's more chariot wheels, right? Just like I said, there's a lot of them down there, a lot of them, right? And then let's see here, it says, and when they came from Moriah, they could not drink of the waters, or for they were bitter. So one of the things when Israel came out, when they crossed over, one of the first things they ran into were the bitter waters of Moriah, right? So whatever path we're looking for, it has to have bitter waters. And now there is a location, I think they said it was 30, I forgot, it's 30 kilometers from the crossing point. And I apologize, fam, I actually had a map, but I didn't stick it in here. But there is they did come across a well of bitter waters, and that is in Saudi Arabia today. Now, you can actually go and visit. But in addition to the bitter waters, that's when they came to Elam, where there were 12 wells of water, right? 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees. So they're looking for a place that has 12 wells of water and a whole bunch of palm trees. And guess what? Right next to where the Israelites supposedly came across, right past the bitter waters, there was also a place where it had palm trees and 12 wells of water. And actually, what the Saudi Arabians did, they actually put, let me see if I have a picture of it. They put these stone casements around the wells so that it would capture as it catches the water and lets the water run out. But we have two things that are in Saudi Arabia that's matching up with the Bible, right? So we had some things on the other side of the Sea of Aqaba, Now we're starting to look at some evidence, or now we're starting to see evidence on the other side of the Sea of Africa. And in addition to that, even though this is not necessarily in the scriptures, right next to the, this location where you had the, I believe it was next to the 12 wells. There was also, caves that were built inside of it, and inside those caves they found Egyptian hieroglyphs inside these caves. But the thing that makes this the most probable crossing place of Israel and the destination of Israel has to do with this. So I know it doesn't look like much, but the scriptures talk about how Israel, when they kept going, everyone knows about the whole golden calf thing, right? Right. So whatever location you choose or you propose is the location of Israel, whether it be in Africa, whether it be in East Africa, South Africa, Congo, over in Saudi Arabia. These are the things you have to have in order to confirm that place is, or I guess in this case, Mount Sinai, or the mountain that Israel went up, as even Pamela mentioned before. So what we're looking at here is a altar. This is an altar at the base of a mountain. We're going to talk about the mountain in a moment, but we all know about the altar of the golden calf worship. So in Saudi Arabia, in front of this mountain, Saudi Arabia actually has it fenced off, and you can't go in there today. And from what I hear, it's like, it's punishment if you cross that fence. But the thing about this altar is that there's calves sketched on this altar. And it's not just any calf that's sketched on this altar. It's Egyptian calves that's sketched on this altar in Saudi Arabia, down the street and around the corner from the 12 springs of Maribah, right? Down the street and around the corner from the bitter springs, down the street from where they supposedly crossed over. So let's see. Oh, I see. I see Pastor Kelly is in the chat. So hey, Pastor Kelly, hang on one second. I'm gonna text you the StreamYard here. Hang on. I know like I said, I wasn't gonna keep you long anyway, family, but I just wanted to share with you some things that I had come across a long time ago, and why, when it comes to things like location, I look for certain things before I change. I'm open-minded to the point where, I don't think that, we know everything, or that I know everything. But at the very least, what I do, family, is I put down a list of requirements that's required in order to justify switching, right? And hey, Pastor Kelly, I just sent it to your email. So if you're able to pop in, feel free to hop on and share your thoughts. So, okay. But back to this altar at the base of this mountain. So again, like you said, at the altar at the base of this mountain, it has an Egyptian calf written on it. Not just one, but many Egyptian calves written or sketched on this mountain. And this is somebody that they're taking pictures, through this fence, right? Not only do they have a picture of a calf, they have a menorah on this altar. Just in case you were wondering, like, oh, well, maybe it's just some random people that made this altar and they were sketching on it random, but they also wrote a menorah on it. Come on, family. It gets even better. It gets better, family. So we have this, and actually, yeah, Pastor Kelly, I'm gonna look out for you on the I'm looking out for it. I think I got you. Let's see. There you are. I think I got you. Peace and blessings, guys. How you doing?
I'm doing great, cuz just sitting back and enjoying the show, man. Giving
Oh,
some awesome information, and I'm glad that you're showing this information here, because, like you said, a lot of this information that you're sharing, we have in our, how can I put it, our library,
yeah,
of information, but it's just so much that and so many topics to cover. It's like, how do you get it? How do you fit it all in? So
right.
I don't want to take away or jump the broom, so to speak, with the information you're going to share.
It's all
Because
good.
I'm not sure if you saw the link I put in the chat, and I think I showed this in our collab about the pews in Savannah. So
Right.
I'm going to sit back and just if you need me or like me to interject, just feel free to let me know. But
Okay.
so great information that you shared about the dynasties, and I got to have some information in regards to the 13th dynasty that is overlooked, that we can actually utilize to really pinpoint Israel's existence as well, to further substantiate what you're discussing tonight of where is Israel. So
Mm,
yeah, great job, great job.
praise Most High. Yep. Yeah. When it comes to like posting um, the text to the screen, bear with me, family. Let's see. Unpinned message. Okay. I think I got it. All right. But yeah, thanks, cuz. But yeah, like I said, family, it's like wherever. How can I put it? Where anytime we want to change a location, right? The only thing that I would say I would recommend is to have a list of requirements. Like, don't just move without having a list. Like, let's say, for instance, if you say that, okay, I used to believe that Egypt was in the top right hand corner of Africa, but now I believe it's over to the other side. Well, I'd say just make a list. Like, all right, so if it's on the other side, I need to have pyramids. I need to see a sphinx. I need to have some archaeological evidence to support it. That sort of thing. So I would just say, like, just kind of make sure, just like I said, a friendly suggestion. Just make sure you have those supporting facts to help support your idea or your theory. Because for me, when it comes to Israel, this particular hypothesis as far as where Israel went is strong, and we're just getting into it. We have menorahs written on an altar. We have
Absolutely.
Egyptian calves, not regular calves, Egyptian calves written on an altar at the base of a mountain. And let's keep
Hey,
going because
cuz,
go ahead.
real quick, even to your point, like the altar that you shared, is very well protected. You cannot just have access to this altar. This is one of the presentations, one of the actually I have a video of it that I use internally when I'm teaching. But to your point, like, this is protected area. Not everyone just have access to this area. You see the fence around it.
Yep.
And to your other point too, when we think about, for example, Martin Luther King. Now, family, we know almost every city where we live at, there's a Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Right.
That does not necessarily mean that Martin Luther King actually visited that territory, or that's the birthplace of Martin Luther King. So we have to be careful when we see certain things on maps. Of course, we should expect wherever we are scattered to, we're going to retain some of the names of that's within our heritage. We're going to name territories based upon our heritage, just like other communities. Wherever they move to, they bring in some of those names that are based within their community to those areas that they travel to. So just because you see a Memphis, Tennessee, doesn't
Right.
mean that that's Memphis, Egypt. You know what I
Right.
mean? So we
Right.
have to really be careful of how we look at these maps, and make sure, like you said, do your proper due diligence. You have to have some additional markers to substantiate your claim, because again, you're going to have to answer the question, where are the pyramids? Where's some of the other things that are bookmarks that the scriptures give us to do our comparison, our deductive reasoning to substantiate whatever claim that is being made.
Yeah. And to your point, if let's say, for instance, if we say that the mountain that Moses went up was in a different place, then that's fine. That's perfect. Great. Well, show us the altar. Show us the proximity of the 12 springs, and show us the bitter, where the bitter springs should be right around the corner as well. And some of these other things that we're going to get into, need to be there as well. So, like I said, I'm totally fine with us discovering a new place. But the only thing is what I'm just trying to get to relate to everybody is that the only thing is that it has to check all the check boxes. That's all, fam. That's all I'm saying. So let's take a look here. It says, Exodus 19, verse 23, it says, and Moses said unto Yahuwah, it says, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, set bounds about the mound or the mount and sanctify it. So in the scripture, there, Moshe was given the commandment or the mandate to set boundary stones around the mountain. So that's another thing, that whatever mountain you find, it has to have boundary stones. And guess what? This one has boundary stones set around the mountain. And at every 400 yards or so, it's all broken down now. There's a cluster of rocks I think they said for the distance of about 5 miles around the perimeter of this mountain. So again, that's one of the things we can check off as we're going through the scriptures. And the next one we get to is Exodus chapter 20, verse 25. It says, if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. So another thing that we have to find, family, for this mountain is there has to be an altar of hewn stone at the base of the mountain. And guess what? Now this one have an altar for the calves. This one also has boundary stones on the outside. It has the Egyptian hieroglyphs on the altar. It has the menorah on the altar. This one also has an altar for sacrificing at the base of the mountain of hewn stones. And that's a picture of it at the base of the mountain. There's some, more impressive pictures of it, but I think this is like drone footage that we're looking at. And so this is somebody's rendering of the altar as well. Let's see what it says next. It says, and Moses wrote all the words of Yahuwah, and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Yisrael. So next thing we're looking for, family, are 12 pillars. And yes, this mountain has 12 pillars at the base of the mountain. You can see, family, why when it comes, as far as like I'm concerned, like this is like the strongest candidate out there. Right now we're starting with Mount Sinai, and then we're going to go to Israel. But I believe the scriptures talk about Israel is north of Mount Sinai. It's north of Mount Sinai. But so far so good, right, family? We're knocking all these check marks off on our box here. And it says Exodus 19 verse 18, and it says, and Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. Now, let's look at it. Says, see where it says Yahuwah descended upon it in fire. Upon it in fire. So now we're looking for a mountain that shows signs of having fire being descended upon it. And in this mountain is scorched at the top. It has the altar at the bottom. It has also the altar to the golden calf at the bottom. It has the 12 pillars. It has, those boundary stones around it. Now it's also scorched at the top. Because, well, maybe you're thinking, well, maybe it's volcanic. No, it's not. When you take the rocks, I think, I don't have the pictures of it, but, well, I might let me grab it, see if I can find pictures of it. But the net here, fam, is that there's pictures of people taking the rocks from the mountain and smashing it down. And when the rocks break, the inside of the rock is not burned. It's not volcanic rock. The only thing that's scorched is the outside of the rock, family. That's a scary place.
Yeah.
That's a scary
And to
place.
your point, because I like how you're breaking that portion down. It's just like if you want to see the age of a tree, right?
Yeah.
When that tree is split in half, or a branch is chopped off, or whatever the case may be, you'll see rings, and each ring is, I believe, depending on the tree, can be a year to 2 years, represent a year to 2 years. So like you said, if you take a rock, now if you crack that rock in two, if you don't see this rock, the base of this rock being made from ash, then that's going to tell you that this is not a volcanic results of a volcanic activity. So great point that you made there. I just thought I'd touch on that. Great point.
Yeah, thank you for that, cuz. So I'm I was trying to Google it in the background. I'm gonna come back to it. But like I said, right now we're racking up the evidence for this being, the real Mount Sinai. You have this thing being scorched. And actually, I mean, another miss that another bad on my part was, before I went live, I was looking because I remember coming across it. It's in one of my books. Let's see, it's in one of my books. Like, I don't know if you can see, like, this was one of the books I got early on, like the Exodus case. And this is one of those books that's filled with all kinds of evidence in it. And in one of these books, it actually shows a bush, because we all know about the burning bush, right? But it actually shows a bush that has the same char that you see at the top of this mountain. There was a circle char around the bush, but the bush wasn't burned. That's why I said, like, this family is a scary place. Like, this is that place, right? But let's keep going, family. So like I said, we're racking up the evidence, for this being Mount Sinai. So let's keep going. It says, let's see, and when Moses saw that the people were naked, and of course, Aaron had made them naked. Oh yeah. So this is shortly after, the people, our brothers and sisters, were worshiping the golden calf. Moses comes down. He is mad, right, pissed off, and him and some Levites go and slay some Israelites. And it says at the very bottom, it says, there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. So that's a lot of people. So another thing, family, so whatever mountain you're proposing is the mountain that Moses went up on, you have to have a grave site of about 3,000 men. Guess what? This one has it too. So, and what they used was they used gravestones, and you'll see every now and then you'll see these odd stones kind of just poking up in this field, right? And some of them are laid down, but this is a mass grave site right on the side of that mountain. Actually, it's close to the golden calf altar. So again, fam, like I said, this is a strong candidate of where our people went when we came out of Egypt. And this,
yep, there it is. There it is, the split rock. Yep.
Split rock of Horeb. So, in close proximity to Mount Sinai is the split rock of Horeb. This is where Moshe hit the rock split, and water flowed down from the water to feed all of Israel. So you're talking about like 1 million people. So this thing was it filled the whole valley from what these archaeologists are saying. And what they're saying is that when they went up and they took a look at this rock, they noticed that it was water that actually did flow from it, because it washed down a lot of the sediments that were down here. It was washed clean. And I know you can't get an idea of the scale and the size, but this thing is huge. Like this man that's standing in the foreground, if he were to go up and stand, at the top right next to that rock, he would barely register, in your vision, because that's a massive, massive rock. But yeah, Pastor Kelly said, it sounds like you're familiar with this rock as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember when we did the collab with the pews in the opening portion of my explanation about culture. I actually used the video footage of the split rock as I was expounded on the culture aspect. But yeah, this, along with the altar and some of the other things that you highlighted, I have actually videos internally that I share with the assembly of what you're highlighting right now, to show that this is real. We have tangible evidence to prove that you just cannot get around, and you just laying it out excellent. I like how you're laying it out for the people to basically, you letting them be the jury. You know what I mean? You just present the information, and it's up to them to say yay or nay in their own walk, but it doesn't take away from the actual truth that you're sharing.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, family, I just want to show you that there is a lot of evidence that, I don't know about you, Pastor Kelly, but I haven't really seen anyone bring out this information, as a counter narrative to some of the other stuff that were the movement, because I think it's really a movement of Israel, the land of Israel being someplace else. But I just wanted to bring this out to the community, let you all see it. You can go and research it on your own, right? There's a lot of good documentaries out there on it. You can actually look up, go on YouTube, look up the real Mount Sinai, or what is it called? Like the Exodus, the real Exodus, something like that. But you'll find it, family. It's also on Amazon.com as well. So, and that wasn't all. I mean, I just touched on some of it, because there's actually, I don't know if you can see on the screen, like on the top right. So also in this area, in this vicinity, is supposed to be Elijah's cave, like the cave that Elijah went to. Is also in that same area, right, on the same mountain. And you can, like I said, you can barely see it on the right-hand side. This one also, it shows the burning bush, but I don't have a good picture for that, so we'll just take it for what it is. But any last comments on that before I bring Dr. Aaron L. Hodgkin?
Just to your point, some of the things that you highlighted earlier, I encourage you guys to get the book titled "The Admonitions of an Egyptian Sage" from a hieratic papyrus in Leiden by Alan H. Gardner, and just that source alone literally proves and confirms the plagues that that Egypt was inflicted with due to what they've done to the Israelites. And then also there's another source that you can use is Avaris Egypt, and that'll further prove with the plague pits of with a massive amount of death due to these plagues. They actually have plague pits that's throughout that area, to bury the dead, because of the possibly contamination of those bodies with those diseases. So they didn't do the regular Egyptian burial. They basically did like a massive burial of the dead. So just thought I'd highlight a couple of additional things to further bring about your point of what you pointed out in terms of with the sources that you presented. There's others, even with the names that you presented. I believe it's one last source I'll mention real quick. It's called the the Papyrus of the Late Middle Kingdom in the Brooklyn Museum by William Christopher Hayes. and that's where you'll see a number of Hebrew names such as Issachar, and like you also pointed out, you'll see Sifra, one of the midwives' names. There's some other names you'll see there, a few of some additional tribes names there. So those are some additional sources I just thought I'd mention in conjunction to what you've already presented. So appreciate you guys for what
Awesome.
you did. So
okay, well, let's switch gears a little bit, family. So like I said, the I want to say the purpose, but the goal is, family, I want to walk us from Egypt over to Israel, right? From Egypt over to Israel. So for this leg of the journey, we went from Egypt over to Mount Sinai. And then from Mount Sinai, we're going to go to Israel. And, like we were saying, we just wanted to put out the information out there for you, let you go out and do the research on your own. And just let you know that there is a lot of evidence that points to this being the mountain of Mount Sinai. I mean, in order to usurp this as being the mountain, you got to have a lot of evidence, family. I mean, it can't just be a mountain, right? It has to be a mountain with boundary stones, with altars, with, burned at the top, all sorts of stuff. I mean, like I said, we didn't even go through all of the evidence for this mountain because we kind of run out of time. So, but without further ado, I'm going to bring in Dr. Eran Elhaik, and thank you for being patient, because I know we were running behind today. So, but thank you for hopping on, Dr. Elhaik. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. Absolutely fine. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the viewers.
Good. Excellent. All right, family. Well, if you're not familiar with Dr. Elhaik, just to kind of give you some background from my perspective. Mm-hmm. So I, of course, I do a lot of, documentaries and, working with Moray, Josh with Rebirth and Mo, our chiefs. And, as we're, putting together some of these documentaries for, at least, for me, there's at least 2 or 3 documentaries, most of which we haven't released yet, where I use Dr. Elhaik's his research. And basically, it's a part where, where I'm dealing with the history of the Ashkenazi Jews, and as far as tracing their origin, whether it be through their language or DNA. Dr. Elhaik was one of those papers that comes up in Google, when you're doing your research. And I must say, his research, his work has been paramount, has been key in refuting a lot of the narrative as far as the origin of the Ashkenazi Jews. And I won't say too much more than that, because I'll let you, Dr. Eran, kind of give our audience, a bit of your background. But I just wanted to give that footnote that I personally have used a lot of your work, and I mean your work is actually teed up on some of my upcoming documentaries. And let me tell you, family, it's one of those it's one of those key pieces of evidence that that when it was put out there, you caught a lot of flack for it. Let me stop talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doctor.
You know what? And too, I could share the sentiment too. It's an honor to be on the panel with you, Doctor, because I too, about 10 years ago, came across your paper with your findings with the John Hopkins paper. I can't remember the actual site off the top of my head, but bringing into question the commonly held assumptions about the Jewish community in terms of the DNA trace, the patterns, and so forth. So I'd like to say as well, really appreciate your work, and just the boldness, especially to be able to present this information that may stir up much needed questions, which it should, but to still press forward and reveal this information publicly. So I really appreciate you. So I'll fall back. Really appreciate it again, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words. It's heartwarming to hear that. Yes, my little bit of my background. My background is computational biology. I studied both biology and computers and mathematics and statistics. So I did my PhD at the University of Houston. Then I did my postdocs at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, School of Public Health. I became a faculty there for a short while. Then I moved to England to start my first season professorship. And then I recently moved to Sweden to become associate professor here and lead the bioinformatic studies. The studies that you're referring to was in the middle phase of my career when I moved to Johns Hopkins to start doing population genetics. At that time, the first genomes of Jews were published, and that was thrilling for me because I've always been interested in history and genetics, and there are always different versions and disagreements at that time between historians, of course, and it was crucial for me to know who's right. And when that data became available, I began analyzing it, and I got completely different results from those that were published. And it took me 6 months where I haven't done anything. I just sat on the train and just thinking and thinking. I knew the papers by heart by then. I didn't even need to read them. And I was just thinking, what have they been doing that is so different? And in this, mental exercises that I did, I began to peel layer after layer of these disguise, of these methodological fallacies, of these assumptions, of these false assumptions, of these truthiness that are not really there and are not really scientific. And that took a very long time because everybody were doing it, the same things. And after 6 months of doing nothing, just thinking, I started to do the experiments and to show that actually those papers that were published were not really designed to discover anything except what the authors wanted to show, that modern day Jews are close to Israel without having any other data. When the data without having ancient DNA data by that time. So how do you make this connection between people who are looking Europeans, for all intent and purpose, speaking European language, Yiddish, very similar to German or Slavic with Slavic component? How is this all of a sudden become a Semitic language? No idea. But none of it fit one with proper methodology. Once you're comparing, okay, let's properly compare hypothesis number one. Do Jews look like Levantine people? Hypothesis number two, do Jews look like people of the Caucasus, who would be the closest relatives of the Khazars and the Turks and all these other people in this area? And when I compared these two hypotheses for the first time in the history of genetic literature, not just doing the first hypothesis that tells me what it is that I wanted to show. Yeah, doing one hypothesis is easy. You always get the answer that you want. When you compare hypotheses, all of a sudden you get a different answer. And that study was not easy to publish. But once it was published, then it's made revolution and in the field that I was unaware of. And people wrote me and said, wow, you've put your footstep in this field of genetics. That was a lasting landmark. And what are you talking about? But that was this greatness of this study. The follow-up study that I did was published 3 years later, now with novel methodology that I developed, this biogeographical methodology that allows you to take a DNA and put it any place in the world where it has originated. That technology did not exist. So once again, how do we locate people in the map without this technology? Well, again, we're by imagining those results. When I developed this algorithm, this GPS, geographic population structure, Ashkenazi Jews were mapped to southeastern Turkey, which was very peculiar. It was not Israel, it was not Khazaria, it was somewhere in Turkey that had absolutely no significance in Jewish writing and that we know of. And I sent my postdoc to the library with a sandwich and spare socks, and I told him, don't come back without an answer. We need to understand why Jews are going to Turkey. The algorithm is very accurate. It was very accurate for every other population except the Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, of course, that it placed them in Turkey. He came back with a huge book like this, 600 pages of ancient traveler journeys, documentaries. That people walked around, just like Benjamin of Tudela, they walked around and they documented the place that they went. So we could get a glimpse of ancient villages and settlements that are not on the maps anymore. And in this book, we found 4 areas, all of them exactly where GPS pointed us, settlements that do not exist anymore, only one survived, whose names derived from the word Ashkenaz.
Wow.
So we have Ashkuz, Ashnaz, Iskuz, and we all of a sudden, from having no place in the world whose name derived from the word Ashkenaz, not Jews. Jew is easy to find. It's a very short word. It exists in other words. Finding a place that's called Jew means nothing. Ashkenaz is a very long word. From having 0 places, all of a sudden we jump to 4, all of them in the same place, all of them where genetics told us that it will be. And that place also fits with the place of the kingdom of Ashkenaz mentioned by Jeremiah. The kingdom of Ashkenaz was not Germany. Jeremiah was not prophesied that Germany would go fight Babylon. That did not happen. He didn't know where Germany was. So there is no way that Germany is Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz was and has been always Armenian and Iranian lands. And this place where we found the Ashkenaz perfectly fit the missing kingdom of Ashkenaz, because you have Madai and you have the other kingdom, the Jeremiah prophet, and that's exactly the kind of groups. Now we can make a circle of the kind of kingdoms that we're going to wage Babylon. Not exactly happened the way he expected.
Right.
Eventually, it was the Persians who conquered the Babylons, but they were in the neighborhood too.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to say to your point, Dr. Iran, I was trying to share this table of nations here. I don't know if it'll show up.
Yeah, it's the table of nations is the top second from from the right on the top.
Yeah, let me see if I can share this tab instead. There we go. So to your point, and this is what I found interesting. So I'll just kind of repeat just a little bit of it, just so that people are following. So basically, you use GPS to determine where the Ashkenazi lived, or their point of origin. And I think there's another methodology that you use, but I'll ask you about that in a second. But basically, you based off of your calculations, you were able to pinpoint them. And I guess the location, if we're looking at the location in the table of nations, it would be in the location of Ashkenaz.
Exactly. It's exactly where you're stepping. It's a little north to Lake Van, but you see the word Ashkenaz is there on the map. It's a little southwest from that.
Okay.
But it's right there.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's interesting because I think. So did you also do another study where you compared the DNA of, I guess it was kind of like a genetic distance comparison, right? Where basically, for those who may not be familiar with genetic distance comparisons, you basically, you're comparing 2 people or 2 groups, one to another, and depending on how, if they're closely related, then the genetic distance value should be small. And Dr. Iran, please correct me. Feel free to correct me if I misspeak. But if the closer they're related, the smaller the genetic distance value. Like a mother and father, or sister, brother, their genetic distance value is going to be extremely small compared to someone that's like a 4th or 5th generation cousin.
Exactly.
So when we take that and we extrapolate that and we apply that to genetics, and we're looking at populations around the world, let's say, and we take the Ashkenazi, for example. And this is why I love the comparison that you did, because it's one of those things where it's so obvious that we should have done, from the beginning. And that is, let's say, let's take where you think you're from, and we'll compare your DNA to that place. But we'll also take your DNA and compare it to this other place where I think you're from. Whether it be Georgia or the biblical Ashkenaz, that sort of thing. And let's just see, which one you're closest to. I may say, as a researcher, that you're from biblical Ashkenaz. You may say that you're from biblical, Israel. Let's see which location you're closest to. It's like, that's just the easiest, simplest comparison that you can do. And when you run that comparison, and like I said, keep me honest here. I just want to make sure I'm representing the research. But when you do the comparison, you find that over and beyond that the Ashkenaz population have a closer genetic distance value or closer relationship to biblical Ashkenaz. Is that a true statement?
So when you do this kind of comparison, it's important to be honest. And when you read those studies, you have to read them critically, because the easiest misconception to create and to falsify is to exclude the population that are the closest to the test population and include only about the population that you want to show. So
Right.
for years and years, Ashkenazic Jews were compared to Palestinians and to English.
Right.
They came closer to the Palestinians, hence the connection to Israel. But those were just two people that are very different. And when you include populations like Italians and Caucasus people, Georgians, Armenians, Jews would be closer to Georgians and Armenians than to Palestinians. But these comparisons were not done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead, finish your thought.
So this is what my study did for the first time. It shows, let's compare to Palestinian, let's compare to German, let's compare to those Caucasus populations, and these Caucasus and Italian population came up. Now, when some groups do compare to the Italians and they find the similarity, they dismiss it by saying, oh yeah, that was the Roman exile. What Roman exile? There was no Roman exile. The Roman did not come to Israel at the year of 70 to exile population because they needed people to pay taxes. That was far more important than taking how many people were exiled. They took people to serve on their ship. They did not come with trains.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
they had to go back to Italy at some point. Okay, they cannot exile even if they wanted to 100,000 people, because they would break the slave market. Okay, it would create inflation in the market. There was no Roman exile. This is just one of those lies that we were told at school. I was told at school.
Yeah. Well, to your point, just to make sure everyone is getting the point. So let's say, for instance, if I'm sure everyone remembers Jerry Springer, right? Well, and Dr. Iran, I'm not sure if you are familiar with Jerry Springer, being from overseas, but there was this show where the question of who the father was, when it came to this this child, this illegitimate or legitimate child, the whole purpose of the show was to determine who was the father, and so there would be this this gentleman that would be on stage. And they would try to figure out, like, if he was the daddy, so to speak. And of course, they go off and do the DNA test. And the climax of the show would be, you are the daughter, you are the father, or you're not the father, that sort of thing. But to your point, let's say, for instance, if you're trying to find the father of the child, so the easiest thing to do to not find the father is to not compare your DNA to the father.
Exactly.
Right? So instead, you would compare it to 5 random people. You compare it to the uncle. Maybe you compare it to, the friend, the milkman. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you run it and you say, oh, well, look, we're not related.
Exactly.
That sort of thing.
Exactly.
But what you're doing and what I think that a lot of the community probably needs to start doing, that is, run these comparisons against the right group. Make sure you're running the comparison against the right group, because when you do that, you can very easily determine who's who. And so I think,
compare it to all the groups, and then you find the right groups.
That's right.
All known groups.
Sure.
And the point about the Italian, just to explain this, because it's not obvious. the similarity to Greco-Romans was can be easily explained by their shared past with where we have now Turkey. Remember, Turkey was conquered by Italian. They call it Constantinople. It was their capital city. So south to the Black Sea, there were always Greco-Romans and Iranians, all of them mixed. And these are the populations that their hybridization created the Ashkenazi Jewish genome. And because after they left this region, they avoided mixing with other populations to a certain degree, of course, they preserved this South Black Sea genetic signature that allowed us to come back after thousands of years and trace them back to where they were. If they were mixing with other populations, these Black Sea signatures would have decayed. It would have disappeared.
That's a good point.
And I had a question to your point, Doctor, especially with the discussion about the genetic distances, and then some of the other, if you want to call it, theories that many came up with to try to confirm who's who. A lot of, it was just a certain targeted group in terms of with some of these tests, like the genetic distances thing, like you pointed out. It was, I believe it was the Romanians, the Hungarians. It was a very selected group of people, and so with that being said, I want to ask a question about the other one that they had, the other, I guess, theory or hypothesis that was out there about what is called the random genetic drift. Would you be able to kind of get clarity on that? And then also, for me, I believe the contradiction of the Kohanim gene is a little bit of a contradiction, especially if the Levites, if Levi is one of the sons of Jacob, then all of them should have the same Y mutation, that of their father. But can you shed some light on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let me, when you see Ashkenazic Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians, this is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays, between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still, some Ashkenazic Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS. The second question you asked was genetic drift. Genetic drift is when we have these mutations that are by chance, that are random, and they accumulate over time. Now, the more time passes, the more of these mutations accumulate. And if a tribe moves from one place to another, two things can happen. They can maintain marriage within that tribe, in which case they will preserve the original signature of the first tribe that they left, and allows us to make connection between these two. The second thing, they can start mixing with the local environment, like almost always happens, and then they will, for a while, show a mixed signature, and then depends on the level of mixture, they will start moving toward the hosting tribe. But if we're looking at the first strategy, if they maintain marriage within the tribe, over a very, very long time, they will not be identical to the original tribe anymore because of this accumulation of random mutations that only happen in this tribe, but not in the original tribe. It happened in the original tribe too, but different random process. So they're not going to be identical. And over time, they're just going to be split. Now, the extension of these splits depends on how much time has passed. And that's genetic drift. Now, in the populations that we're talking about, Ashkenazic Jews, we're looking at 1,000 years. That's not enough time for random drift to create completely separate things. However, you mentioned it, and that's very good because it's a chance to refute another myth. random drift has been used to explain why Ashkenazi Jews are different. When you compare them to the Palestinians, they don't look like Palestinians. When you compare them to English, they don't look like English. So they said, oh yeah, they because they married each other, random drift took its shot and created this unicorn. That's not true. They're just not being compared to the right populations where they came out. If you compare them to the population we mentioned, these Southern Europeans, Turkish populations, you will see much higher similarity. Genetic drift does not act so quickly.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when I did some research on it, it was according to the numbers and basically that formula that was laid out, it can take anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 years for that, I guess, whatever that that mutation to become permanent, a permanent
Exactly.
marker. So yeah, you answered the question, and the other question was about the Kohanim.
Absolutely.
Because that for me didn't really make sense. If all the sons share the same father, how can one son, why mutation be different, especially from the others, the other brothers? So I just had a question on that as well.
Exactly. First, if I may say, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You're on top of the fields, and I take great pleasure in discussing with you and answering your questions. Let's say that you're on the beach and you see people with bathing suits. Some are red, some are yellow, some are white, some are purple with red stripes. You're going to ask all these people, who are you guys? How come you're the only one with purple and red stripes and everybody else are, plain colors? They're like, we're from this city, Beersheba. That's where I am. We all shop at the same store. They're the only one who has it. Like, how interesting. Let me take your DNA. You're going to take their DNA. You're going to also sample the other bathing suits. Other bathing suits are from all over Israel. Okay, we have only one Mediterranean Sea. Everybody are going there. They're going to come from everywhere. The people who are wearing the purple and red striped suit will be much more similar to each other than all the other ones, just because the cities in Beersheba are sort of organized by ethnicity, sort of. And then you're going to come up and say, hey, look, the orange and red stripes bathing suit wearers have all common origin. Some ancestors who probably invented this bathing suit. How exciting. This is exactly how the Levite study was done. And with the beach example, I was not exaggerating. They went to the beach and they sampled people with that surnames. They once again compare it to English. They saw that all the people with the Levite do not share the same DNA. They don't. Third of them did. They decided that those third must represent the Levite because they all share. That does not mean that. That means they all have some kind of common origin. Perhaps we can agree on that. But it does not mean they all have one Levite ancestor. What about the other ones? You have 66% of the people who do not match. But this majority of evidence was dismissed in favor of the much cooler and much small sample size, as things that happen, unfortunately, often in science. And then the whole Levite legend was born. Of course, there was a follow-up. It created, spun this anonymous company, Family Tree DNA, to the front stage, allowed them to become extremely successful, selling those DNA tests that told people whether they're Levites or not. And then continued with follow-up studies that unfortunately were less yield results that were not very favorable to these Levite mutations. What happened was that the same mutations were found in Africa and in all the Arab countries that surround Israel. So that wasn't really cool. I mean, that's not what we wanted. No longer this unique homogeneous priestly group that we, at least the scientists, imagined. So they defined another haplotype that was longer, hopefully to lose some of those baggage, unwanted necessary populations. That did not help. The extended region in the DNA that was shared among the Jewish Levite was once again shared among all the other ones. And then the research was abandoned because this was a dead end. The legend continued to live, of course. People do not read all those papers that tells you that they were unsuccessful in identifying some kind of signature among the people who carry the surname Levite on their Y chromosomes. People don't know that, and most people don't think why there is no reason in the world that such a signature would be found. Okay, people who carry the surname Levite and Cohen are the first and second most common names in Israel. That was not the case in the Bible. The Levites were a minority. Do we have any reason to believe those Levites over the years created so many offspring that all of a sudden they become the first and second most common names today in Israel? No, of course not. Can we explain why some villages, all of the people are named Levites, and then in some villages none are? Of course not. Do we realize that people did not have surnames until a few hundred years ago? Once again, these questions are not being asked. So once again, it's a very good example to how myth is being created and maintained and being pushed for profits.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that, like I said, the beauty of it all, given the complex web of disinformation, for lack of a better term, I would say that the beauty of it all is that, I think at the end of, like I was saying earlier, I think that at the end of the day, if there's some contention as to where, like, for instance, where the Jewish people come from, if they want to, validate, their belonging to, that land, validate them being, Israelites or whatnot, the easiest way to do it, is just to do a simple genetic distance test. Like, that's it. Like, you don't have to, climb onto the top of Mount Everest. You don't need to do some super, some super complex computation. I would say, I guess my challenge, to those that would, that would want to argue to say that, of course, like the Ashkenazi are in fact the original indigenous population of Israel. I would just simply say, then simply compare your DNA to the group or that's in Georgia, in Russia, Georgia.
Yeah.
That's it. And just see if it's close. Is it closer to Russia, Georgia, or is it closer to the to the Palestinians? So
yes. But those tests, of course, are not commercially available. What happened is that commercially available tests include the Ashkenazi group already in the test. And when you compare Ashkenazi to Ashkenazi, the Ashkenazi group will come up and mask all the other results. Okay. So on the one hand, you have people paying to know what they already know, which I find ridiculous. And on the other hand, you have a company not sending results that may upset people. So all in all, people cannot find out the truth. And all companies do this except my test. In my test, I do not include Ashkenazi Jews. This is not the question. This is not the answer that people, I think, want to ask. I think they're asking what the question that we just discussed: who am I closest to else? Not just to my group. And that's in modern DNA test. When you're looking at ancient DNA tests, this is a lot more interesting, because all of a sudden you don't have Ashkenazi Jews, you don't have Mizrahi Jews. Now you just have farmers and soldiers and metal workers, no-name peasants, only known by their bones. Yep. Now you tell me to which one am I? Do I look like more? Then you will find the answer.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue. Oh, go ahead, Pastor.
And I think, and you could correct me, Doctor. I believe his name was Zeusman Diskin. That when you deal with the genetic distances, he highlighted that all the groups that was part of that test had nothing in common with each other. And go ahead, Doctor. I just thought if you can elaborate on that.
He did, and he was punished for that. he fared a lot less than people in his field. During his PhD, found out that his supervisor has manipulated the data the same way we just discussed about Ethiopian Jews, making them look more like other Jewish groups instead of looking like Ethiopian that are not Jews, which is what they look like. Of course, this study has huge ramifications in the political climates in Israel. If Ethiopians, Jews, do not look like other Jews, but rather like Ethiopian non-Jews, who's to say that they're Jews? And then why bring them to Israel? Right? Because there is a big question: are they really Jews? Many of them converted to out of fear or to protect their lives. We do know there were Jews there. They had the Aksum kingdom. They were very powerful, but it fell from its power in the Middle Ages. So are they Jewish or not? Now, what Israel did, they sent this rabbi who asked this question and decided, yeah, they're the tribe Dan, right? Talking about makeup stuff. But of course, that doesn't solve the question about every individual person and who they married and so on and so forth. Mixing a halakha question, Jewish law, with ethics and morals and modern Jewish law. It was all a big mix, and we needed answers that were slightly more accurate. He suspected that his supervisor has been manipulated data, and he came out and said that, and he nearly flunked out of his studies. Fortunately, he was saved, and he published his several studies showing these, not just his supervisor, but other people in the field were manipulating data about the Cohen and Levites too, to make the results look more biblical and fits the Zionist narrative of there was once a Jewish group, then it dispersed all over the world, but they maintain marriage inside the family. So once again, maintain some kind of genetic signature that is unique to all of them. And here now we can find them. That story is not true, factually not, but there are people who are trying to push it like it is.
And last question. Oh, I'm sorry. You were still going to continue. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well, just the end of the story. He published a couple of studies refuting those other studies. He published the one with the Y chromosome, which I believe you refer to, showing Ashkenazi Jews are closer to Italians, which is the same thing that I found, except he interpreted a little differently. And at the end of the day, he could not find a position, and he became a technician in some lab in Israel. He finished his scientific career for speaking out the truth.
And my last question, and I think, and I'll step back a little bit. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, cousin. But it's interesting that you brought up the tribe of Dan with the Ethiopians of that narrative. But it seemed like that's a kind of like a uniform narrative, because you have like the Igbos, and it seems as if that narrative of the tribe of Dan is being superimposed on them. The other ones? I can't think of them off the top of my head. The Yoruba. It seemed like many of them are just that narrative of the tribe of Dan, with the exception of the Limba, that has the narrative of the Levites, because of the Kohanim test or whatever the case. So any thoughts on that? Because I just was curious about your thoughts on that, why it seems as if that narrative of the tribe of Dan is being superimposed on many of the tribes in Africa that are being discovered and confirmed to be blood descendants of Israel.
You're making a very good point. By the 19th century, there wasn't a tribe on earth that has not associated itself or has been associated by scientists with one of the tribes of Israel. The story is very known, and the scientists that were there, the anthropologists, the students of Franz Boas and others, not geneticists yet, they went across the world and discovered one tribe after another. And none of these tribes has been in a cave living in isolation. They all met missionaries in their lives. They all knew the stories. They could repeat some of them. They could have adopted some of those habits. So they have been either, again, associating themselves or have been associated by researchers with one of the tribe. It was one of those things that anthropologists try to do. They believed in the Table of Nations, the same one that is on the screen right now. They believed in that. And they tried to show how these tribes spread. They couldn't. After a while, they realized people of very, very great distances share the same traditions, but not other traditions. And in between, there was nothing. There was no reasonable way to explain it except that we have to move on from these stories, and we cannot accept those claims that those people have that they belong to these tribes. That was the conclusion that scientists left, and they abandoned this hypothesis completely. Until the establishment of Israel and the need to do this, ask this question, which was never supposed to be asked, who's a Jew? The answer is simple: whoever say they are. Back then, there was no motivation for people to really go to Israel unless you're really feel something and willing to go to, to those swamps and risk malaria and everything, and go to be a founder of this with this group of people that have nothing else in common except the same dream. But as Israel got better and wealthy and became a social state and a welfare state, more people wanted to go there who may not have necessarily been Jews. Many of the Russians who came in the 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union are not Jews. They used fake documents. They knew it. Israel knew it. America knew it. They didn't let them go. They wanted them too. They were very well-educated population because the Soviet Union invested in education. But Israel asked America to block their access so they can get some of the engineers. It was not that they're not Jews. Some of them, 300,000 of them are still defined as non-Jews. So meaning they cannot get married in Israel to the general population, except those people in those 300, because they're not defined as Jews by the Orthodoxy. So those questions already all of a sudden became important, and all of a sudden those who would answer those questions. So it was rabbis who came up and said, "Oh yeah, this is a Dan tribe, this is a Naphtali tribe," and so on. All of course were made up. But only now, if I may switch to the topic of ancient DNA, only now ancient DNA from Israel, from people buried in the tribe territories, has surfaced. And that's a game changer. That's something I've been waiting for since I got into this field, when I was making my first steps in Hopkins and looking from the window and thinking about the next big question that I can ask.
Yeah.
I need ancient DNA from Israel to answer those questions. And only now, as this DNA came up of real tribe people who lived in those territories, and that allowed me to develop this test, which is now available in Ancient DNA Origins website, that allows us to compare people like yourselves to those skeletons from these different tribes and say, are you close to Judah tribe? Are you close to the Levites? Are you close to the Danites? The Danites, by the way, were speculated to be offshoot of the Philistines. And you can see that in the data. Some of them are. It's very cool. Some of them are very clearly of Greek origins, but some are locals, suggesting once again there was some kind of admixture there in Israel.
Yep. Yeah. And just to add to your point there, Dr. Iran. So, I mean, like, just want to make sure everyone's aware of what we're talking about. So before we were talking about, comparing, DNA of people walking around today against other people walking around today, right? Your DNA against modern populations is what people would say. So now what we're talking about is comparing your DNA to the DNA that's extracted from archaeology sites, where, they're able to date, these sites. They know exactly what time period, or have a good idea of what time period, these specimens were, come from, that sort of thing. And they know a little bit about the culture and that sort of stuff. And what they're doing is that they're extracting DNA where they can, and uploading it into a database. And to Dr. Iran's point, at least for us, it's been a game changer. the moment that we were able to start comparing our DNA to, the ancient DNA, all of a sudden, we started seeing some interesting patterns, to say the least. But I won't go down a rabbit hole, because I know I want to be mindful of Dr. Iran's time, because he is, I think, 6 hours or more ahead. So I know after a while your head might start dozing off. So you want to be mindful of that. So, but to follow up on your point, so Israel is finally decided to release these ancient DNAs, and I guess we are, to a certain degree, and let me know if it's the true statement, but we are, how can I put it? We are victims, or we are dependent on the DNA that they decide to release, if that's a good statement, because there's a time period and a place. And what I mean by that is that the DNA that's extracted is extracted from different places from around Israel, from different time periods from around Israel. And one of the things that I've been pushing for the longest is, when you go to, like I said, I'll make this really quick, because I just want to be mindful of your time, Doctor. Let me do this real quick screen share, if I could. Let's see, screen share. Oh, it's over here. So if I go here, hopefully you can see the screen, and yeah, you can see it. All right. So this is like the British, the British Museum. I click on here. I'm looking at the Lakesh relief. So this is a point in time, in history, where we know we have a picture of the Israelites, right? So this is a picture of the Israelites, and folks will look at that and say, oh, these are Negroid people, short, nappy woolly hair. And then we also have the cranial analysis that goes along with it. And so in this particular slice in time comes from a particular point in time. And for me, I'm like, man, this the only thing that would finish off this, that would confirm, that would be I guess a triple confirmation on this finding, would be DNA, ancient DNA. So to this date, I'm still waiting for the DNA that comes from this archaeological site, because I think there was like over, keep me honest with you guys, I think it's like over 300, 600 possible skulls that were extracted from that site, but for whatever reason, we can't seem to get the DNA from that site. But in any case, to Dr. Iran's point, but there are other DNA extracted from various places around Israel. And let me see if I can pull up your site in 1 second here. I thought I had it pulled up already. I guess I did not. Oh, here it is. And it is called ancientdnaorigins.com. So ancient DNA.
The site is not shown.
Oh, it's not showing? Okay.
No.
Let me share this tab.
Now it is.
Okay. So this is another game changer, in that you're able to check or compare your DNA to to some of the ancient DNA that's extracted from the archaeological sites from I guess various places in Israel. And let me see if I can back up here, and I'll let you, if you want to give some commentary on it.
Yeah, absolutely. First, you can scroll down a bit on any tribe and see where the extracts were from. You can scroll down a bit. Yep, you see it there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for presenting it. I agree that it is a game changer. Like I said, I've been envisioning it since I got into this field. Point to expand on the point that you made. The data that we have, or the data that are being published, and the data that I collected, not all data are being released. The Khazar samples, the first Khazar samples that were sequenced, were not released. Why? Because people did not want to show Ashkenazi Jews being compared to those Khazars and show how similarity. And that's very unfortunate, because I actually know these researchers, and I asked them for this data many times, and they did not release it. They're just afraid. And the same with all the other findings. So there is some kind of higher intelligence deciding which data to release and which one. and for its own motivations.
Yep.
Now, to overcome those limitations, I developed AI tools that are taking bits and pieces of the published data and create reconstructions. So just like you're using ChatGPT to tell him, hey, write me a cover letter for an IT job, and it creates this Word document. How does it do it? Because it uses bits and pieces of other letters that it has to create what you're asking. And it works in the same way. And with that way, we were able in ancient DNA origins to reconstruct all the 13 tribes of Israel, 13 because Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So it's 13 tribes that lived in Israel, including the Judeans, including the Levites, and the Simonites. And the reason I mention these three because they are showing the highest African genetic similarity. And that is another major discovery that is not being openly discussed. These people have the E1, B1Y haplogroups, and they're showing signs of African in their autosomal group, which is what you may find when you take these tests. This is exciting for me, and I'm sure to you. The Bible is not shy about showing those African connections, of course. There is the story of Zipporah. Prophet Amos says that the Israelites are like the Cushim, the people from Cush, we believe Sudan or Ethiopia. And there are other instances where the Miriam insulted Zipporah for being black, and she was punished. So that was something that was frowned upon. The people who edit the Bible saw it necessary to include this story, and that's quite fascinating. That shows there is so much that we don't understand in the ethnic composition of the Israelites. That right now this ancient DNA that we find give us some idea. You know what? It was much more common in this area to have African DNA, or could have been. I mean, we call it African DNA. It could have been just Levantine DNA that went to Africa, and now it's coming up, right? The direction is still unknown. It should have been back and forth, of course, but we will need more data to answer this question, and which is why we need the help of the community, and which is why I'm grateful to Yeshaya for inviting me to this show. And the more people will participate in this project, the better job we can do to reconstruct the story of the ancient Israelites, and on the way, your stories.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. And to Benea's point, I went to your site, the Ancient DNA Origins, and I actually purchased the entire package for, to get everything, all the results. And I did see, and I know it's going through some upgrades and changes along the way, but I did see, for example, a connection, for example, to the Levites, and can you kind of share a little more information on that? Because I did see the Levites, and I know early on I saw some of the other tribes, but some of them kind of disappeared, but the Levites are there. So can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So first, you didn't disclose what similarity you had, and I respect that. It's your results. I can only share that some members of the community emailed me, and they said they have 20% Levite.
Yeah, I think mine was 15%.
Fell off the chair. That's a lot. We're talking about very high genetic similarity that survived over time, and that's just crazy. And again, before I continue, I just want to dispel some kind of myth and explain how it works. People come and say, how is it possible if the genetic material is being halved in every generation? Yes, it is being halved in every generation, but not if you maintain marriage within the community, because in this case it's half from mom and half from dad, but altogether it's one if mom and dad have both of them the same genetic information. Okay, this is how the Neanderthal can be found at 2% in all of Europe. It is not disappearing over time. It's too stable because at this point, both the mom it's from her mom's 2%, I'm getting one, from my dad 2%, I'm getting one, and it's two again. Okay, so it's not being halved. It all depends on the history of your family. So finding these high percentages is super exciting. And once again, the Levites were Egyptians. We know that because they had Egyptian name, Hophni and Pinchas, Moses. These are all Egyptian names. It is believed that they are the ones who brought the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And it is speculated they were a member of the Chapil, which is a member class of workers that were in Egypt, that at some point rose to prominence because there was a revolution in Egypt, and all of a sudden those Chapil became kings. Okay, and they ruled Egypt for a short while. When they were overthrown, they may have escaped from the new pharaohs. At that time, they could have arrived to Israel and bring with them the knowledge and the story and experience that they acquired in Egypt, and they become the Levite. As you all know, they did not have a territory. The name Levite in Hebrew means joining, something that is adjoining you. They were not a core member. They're not mentioned in the Deborah song, which was one of the oldest pieces of the Bible. They're not mentioned there, probably because they did not exist back then. They joined later on. Okay? So it's a very fascinating group with very exciting history, and they're highly African.
So to point
I
out,
appreciate it.
yeah, good question, and just a few quick things as well. So on the website, off to the right, see where on the blue section. Hopefully my screen is still showing. But see where it says Levite tribe, and then it has the date here, 1250 and 1170. Like, so this is the time period that I'm most interested in. Well, not necessarily this particular time period, but what I would love is for samples to be released. And I know, like I said, I know this isn't anything that you control, Dr. Ron.
Nope.
But my what's going around here? But my request, out to whoever is the gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it's like they've held on to this information for so long. I'm not even sure if I trust it if they released it at this point. It's almost like food in the restaurant. If someone's taking too long to get food in the back, it's like, would you really do it if they took like 30 minutes, an hour and a half to fix your food? But
exactly.
But in any case, I think that because before we were talking about genetic distance value, and that if you were to compare your DNA against the right group, I believe, this is, like I said, just a hypothesis that I'm throwing out there, but I believe that the right group for us is particularly in the territory of Judea, and especially around the relief, the Lakesh relief. Like, if some way, somehow, we were able to get a hold of that DNA extracted from those sites, I think that you would see extremely high numbers within our community. And like I said, it's just a hypothesis, but that's based off of a couple of things. One is of course, we have the Lakesh relief. We also have the analysis on the skulls, which they determine were Egypto-Nubian, but also from oral traditions for people such as the Limba, whose territory, I guess if you look at some old maps, you'll find Limba in the territory of Reuben. That's where the last place that they show up on the map is actually in Reuben. So places like either over in that area during a certain period of time, like in the territory of Reuben, in particular during the time of the Maccabees, I think that would be an extraordinary match. But I understand the game. I understand why someone would not want to release those samples to compare our DNA to, because, like I said, if we did, and if they actually truly release the genuine DNA, I truly believe that you will see some matches, and then that will cause all kinds of problems. But just a hypothesis, just throwing it out there.
I share your excitement. I hope the community would engage, and I will tell you that I'm very concerned there will not be any more samples in the near future, as Israel is going through this religious revolution, it will be even more strict about releasing this kind of genome, this information. And don't mistaken, there are thousands and tens of thousands of skeletons. The data are not the problem. The existence of skeletons that show the whole history of Israel from all the region it exists. It's hidden at some university in some core basement, but it's there. They're not being released because there are political pressures. Just imagine, just for the sake of arguments, tomorrow you're releasing all the skeletons that you collected in Jerusalem, and they're all coming up E1B1. Do you see the Ashkenazi rabbi standing on a stage and then explaining this to people and saying, well, no, we have rights to this temple? That's not happening, right?
Right.
So, or the Moroccan rabbi will come and saying the same thing. The Ashkenazi rabbi said, I don't know how they both can be right. These are the problems we're dealing with, and I'm very concerned there may not be any more samples coming out, and we'll just have to do with what we have. Hopefully, I'm wrong. But once again, the more pieces we have of this puzzle, the more we can put it together with our resources at my lab.
Awesome. Pastor Kelly, did you have any other questions before we wrap up? Like I said, I want to be mindful of Dr. Iran's time.
Well, I really appreciate it, Doctor. I don't have any other questions. He answered my questions, gave clarity on the items that I wanted to present, to give, being that he's an expert in this in what he does. I didn't want to speculate or have, let's just say, internet scholarship, so to speak. You know what I mean? I just wanted to ask the questions that I asked, get a direct answer from someone who's an expert in that area. And I really appreciate you, Doctor, for taking the time out of your schedule and answering these questions, because I know that it has to be a tough position to be in, because I know you're getting a lot of flack. Even some of the research, when I read your works, I know you got a lot of backlash from the Ashkenazi community because of what you released. Ask more questions, you know what I mean? And even to your point, when I did the research on 23andMe and how they had to go through a lawsuit because of some that were doing their DNA tests, they were like, wait a minute, I thought it was going to point over to here, but it's pointing over to, like you pointed out, Khazaria. And it's like, wait a minute, and so there was a lot of legal things that went about with that to have have that removed. But for you to have this tool here that's really with the goal of just giving accurate information based upon what's being released, definitely appreciate it with you, with what you share and you taking the time out to have this discussion. So I look forward to seeing how the site continue to move forward as far as the ancient DNA origins, as well as your works that you have published thus far. And I will say I've shared some of your work, some of the videos you've done years ago, so I'm very familiar with your work. So thank you again, and greatly appreciative to the time and effort you taking the time out to share this information with us.
Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm most grateful and I'm honored. Thank you. Yeah. Just one more word that I forgot to mention before. We were discussing the evidence of Levites and African. We skipped the linguistic aspect. African linguists, many of them have Semitic origins. Tigerian is Semitic. Other languages in Central Africa have Semitic origin. This is very well documented. By no means those populations were isolated. There was always back and forth movement.
And to your point, Doctor, the Bambara, language is very close to the ancient Hebrew, and their language was used to define a lot of the words that, that was in scripture that, and that was being used in the libraries and defining and creating the dictionaries that we see today. So to your point.
Exactly. And some of the most fascinating books in Hebrew, the Hanoch books, only existed in Gaz, in Ethiopia. It extinct everywhere else. but it survived in Gaz, and fortunately somebody took the time to translate it to Hebrew, and that's how we can read it today. And like I told you before, we see a jump of Levantine ancestry in Africa around the time of King Solomon, which is a bit 1000 BC approximately, a little later. Just coincide with the stories of Queen of Sheba coming, and those stories, whether they're real or not, I believe based on the genetic data, they capture some kind of reality where there are relationships with countries in Africa, and there is some back and forth trade. And whenever there is trade, there is gene exchange. That's how people work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Just kind of going through some of the comments here in the chat. But yeah, it's like I said, I think somebody made the comment about the people of color on the site. So just want to put out there. I know everyone has different takes on, who Israel is and what they look like. I and I think you as well, Pastor Kelly. We do believe that Israel is a nation of color, Negroid people. But that's just our platform. So we do respect different thoughts and opinions on that as well. So, but just wanted to throw that out there. All right, family. Well, Dr. Ron, thank you again for joining us. Hopefully you can get some rest now.
I'm going to keep
Any
working.
Any last comments you want to give about this site, your site?
No, I just want to say thank you again to you and to the community for your support. It means a lot to me. You mentioned criticism. I just want to give you an example to what it looks like. When we discovered the location of ancient Ashkenaz, I thought the community would be grateful. Finally, we solved this riddle. 3,000 years. So where was this kingdom of Ashkenaz? And by large, they will. Except the Forward, which is a right-wing Jewish newspaper, 8 negative articles, one after the other. It wasn't like even respond. There was no dialogue. There were 8, one after the other. There was only one positive. It was in Yiddish, in language that very few people can read, and the writer was fired after that. This is what negative feedback looks like, and that was okay. They're entitled to their opinions, and whoever wants to know the truth went and read the paper, and we provided the coordinates on the map. You can go and find those places, those that survived on the map. But that's just the kind of disinformation we have to fight, and I appreciate or to stand up to, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this on your platform. And thank you so much for citing my study and keep propagating the actual findings as they are.
Yep. Well, keep up the good work. Go ahead.
Can I say something real quick? And Doctor, we understand the ridicule because we've come across and we actually use your work as well. And we've gotten a lot of criticism, a lot of, we thought it would be accepted, but we can definitely relate to the unexpected opposite, embracing. We expected to be embraced this information, but we were, met with a lot of ridicule and borderline slanderous. But we definitely understand, and we thank you again for just pressing through the negative responses that you've gotten. Again, thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
All right, family. Well, wow, we are over 2 hours in. So thank you, everyone, for dialing in. So hopefully this was a blessing to you, and hopefully you learned a lot. I know I did. So I think what we'll do is that we'll close out this session, and I think most willing. I think next, we'll see, family. I was going to say maybe next Shabbat we'll finish up on our discussion about where Israel is located. We may do it. Maybe we'll do it before, but I think we'll probably push it up to next Shabbat. So we'll get into it. We'll go down the list and show some more exciting facts about Mount Sinai, and then we'll move on to the land of Israel. All right, family. Well, stay blessed. Hopefully you can enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you later. Shalom, shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, everyone.